Since you mentioned racism, okay. Jimmy Hines, can you mention something about racism? Here's the question. The question is just, this is the question. The question, how did racism impact on your formative years growing up in the mainline suburbs?
What question was that? Copy.
Question is question number 4.
We're starting with number 4?
Yeah, we're only doing 3 questions. 2, 4, and 5.
Okay. I experienced a situation. I went to Hamilton High. Football season. I played football for Hamilton High. And I think I played pretty well. We had a championship game against Ridley Township. Both teams undefeated. 9 wins for Haverford, 9 wins for Ridley Township. I was a leading scorer at that time in all of Delaware County. And we were undefeated at that time. When the game started, I was sitting on the bench with 2 other black players that were sitting on the bench beside me. Game was over, we lose. We lose. And speculation after the game was over. There were many college scouts there offering scholarships. We did not receive a one. That's my tune. That's my tune. That hurts to the day. Because I knew that was the best football player that they had. And the reason we won 9 games was because of me. I call it hidden racism. That's my tune.
Rosalie, would you chime in, please? Some question?
Well, for me, as I grew up, because like Severin had mentioned, our street was Italian and black. So we all played together. We had fun. If we didn't, every now and then a white kid would call you out your name. And then we had one for them. They called us a nigger, and we would call them a big cracker. And we would be mad and fight it out, and then an hour later we're back playing again. So that's how we were. And then I really knew what racism truly was when I happened to go up on the Lancaster Pike one day, and I think we were coming out of the movie. And there used to be a hat store next to the movie, and this white lady came out of the store as I was walking down the street, and she reached down and looked me in my face and said to me, "Why don't you go back to Africa where you belong?" And it just shocked me so bad. I think that was my first realization that there's really something's not right here. And then as I got older and went to from Ardmore Avenue, it was basically an all-black school. And when I went to Ardmore Junior High, it was like a culture shock. It was like I went home one day and I says, because I saw all these rich people, you know, they had money bags, you know, like little purses where they had all their little dollars and all we had was, you know, to get our lunch, you know. And so it made me realize that perhaps I might be poor, so I went home and asked my mother. And I asked her, I said, Mom, are we poor? And she said, why do you ask? And I explained it to her. And after she explained it to me, you know, that no, you're not poor. Have you ever been hungry? I said, no. Have you ever worried about what you're going to, you know, eat or wear? Just like what the Bible says. No. So she said, now, are you poor? I said, no. So I told her my experience. And then that's another introduction into what I consider to be, what's going on here? Because when I was little, I didn't really feel any different than anybody else. And now all of a sudden they're trying to take the way I feel about myself, they're trying to interrupt with that. So, you know, of my community, and because we all experienced it, this is where we all help one another. To say, no, we are somebody, yeah. That's about it.
Okay. Gil, would you chime in something?
Let me go through my little evolution. Okay, so I'm almost 75 now. So born in 50, 60s, elementary school, okay? So Vermont School, at that time, everybody knows we had our extended community, little pockets in every little town. So we did have our own economy, our own social structure that supported us.
People of color.
Yeah, people of color. So you get imprints that go with you your whole life. So I can remember I was at Vermont School in the playground. I was a little boy, kindergarten, first grade. That's probably all I can remember that abuse didn't remove. So I'm playing, and there's a little girl there. So I don't know if I kissed the little girl, touched the little girl. I'm a little baby now. And if y'all know my history, I might not want that back. So the kids came at me, you ain't supposed to do that. But now, here's our evolution. I grew up, I was colored, I was a Negro, I was African American, hold on. I was black, I was an Afro-American, and then an African American. So, yeah, I'm thankful we had a good foundation with our education out here, a good foundation. And there were other experiences. I know you all saw the movie Kaepernick, right? Similar experiences, even though he was of mixed race. I had similar experiences where at a sports event, I'm minding my own business because my family didn't play. You know, if you went to school and acted up. So this little issues were going on with the other kids. You know, they were from Gladwin, Villanova, wherever. And the principal came over to me, and they were throwing stuff around. So the guy comes to me and says, you pick that up. Now I'm saying, well, why did this man come to me? I didn't know who he was. Now I'm a teenager now, 16, 15. And, you know, the whole black thing's starting to beat down, you know, mid-60s, late 60s, you know. So the guy says, you picked that up. I don't know this Caucasian man from Adam. So, F you. I'm not picking it up. So it became a big squabble because I was about ready to, you know, wrestle with the guy. So we get on the bus. It was a basketball game. And everybody knows about Harrington. At that time, we didn't have any. We had some athletes, but we didn't really have teams. Our stuff was kind of ragged. So we lost the game. So we get on the bus, and the coach gets on the bus. Son, what are you all cussed out the principals of this school? And you're going to come to my office there. I'm just bringing this about this racism thing. So, get up there. Okay, did you cuss out the principal. I said, I didn't know who that man was. But he kept trying to tell me to do something I wasn't guilty. I wasn't guilty. So I had to make a vague apology over the phone, call the school. Okay, I'm gonna go along with the protocol. But those issues or incidents have stuck with me and molded me as a young man and as an older adult throughout my life. I could share a whole lot of other stuff, but those are kind of critical that, I mean, through the community, you know, we were used to, you had your pocket, you stayed on this side. Everybody knows if you cross Lancaster Avenue, once you hit Montgomery Avenue, you were subject to being stopped. Where you all going? I mean, you know, and I don't know about now. I mean, I haven't lived here in a while, but, you know, that's the borders we had, you know, but we had an extended community, an extended family. So that's what really supported me. And so if we can say racism, yes, we all have our individual stories, but then there was a general privilege that other communities had over our community. And we just had to accept it. It was kind of accepted. You know, maybe to youth today or younger people today can express themselves a little bit better than we did. We just went along with the protocol, you know. But I had a lot of experiences. I could share it, but I could be here all night talking.
Me too.
And then I might stir something up and make myself angry, and you know, and then I'd be ready to do something. But that's about it. I mean, I just want to share that because I'm quite sure all of us had similar experiences in our life.
Can we hear from Don, please?
Oh, yeah. So I think most of the racism that I encountered growing up on the main line was from the educational component, mainly through Haverford High School. And I think that one of the things that really sticks out in my mind is when I was near graduation and I went to the guidance counselor, and the guidance counselor, you know, I'm thinking, you know, what am I going to do next? And I mentioned college, and she said, absolutely not. You are not going to college. You, and so I was like, wow, you know, this is different. Because everybody else, all the girls around me, white girls, were talking about where they were going to college. And so, you know, she said to me, well, you'll take a secretary typing course, and then, you know, you'll be a secretary. And so, you know, I just accepted that because you know, my family wasn't high on education. So, Christine, you know, I couldn't go home and ask my mom about college or anybody else. So I accepted that. But then, by the grace of God, when I grew up in Bethel, Bryn Mawr, and there was a Reverend McNair. Reverend McNair introduced me. He said, what are you doing? And, you know, I was on a path that I don't want to tell you about, but, you know, wasn't too good. So he said, what are you going to do after high school? And I said, well, I don't know. You know, I just didn't know. And he said, well, I want you to meet this young lady down at a hotel somewhere, and she's going to give you an application to go to college. And I was like, college? And I had already been told that I couldn't go to college. And mind you, that Haverford did not tell us anything about HBCUs. They didn't even mention Cheney. They didn't mention Lincoln. They didn't, I don't know how with Lower Marion what y'all got, but we didn't get any of that. So I went to, so anyway, I ended up in going to Wilberforce, and we got through and everything and graduated. But I will say that the racism that I experienced, if you want to call it that, worked out well for me. Because I noticed that the business people, the people that I interacted with, growing up on the main line, I was not intimidated by white people. I went to their parties, I went overnight, and so I could look them straight in the face, Christine, right? I could look them straight in the face and tell them what I wanted. My fellow people that, you know, business people, colleagues, couldn't. Even my employees, they could not look a white man straight in the face, but I could. And it was something different about me, right? Being a black woman in business, it was something different about, I'm not saying better, but different about me. And so I think that I am so happy that I grew up on the main line, you know, despite all the, you know, racism.
I just want to chime in, like, When I was in Harrison High School, last year, which happened maybe 2 or 3 times, the so-called guidance teacher told me, you know, you're not college material. You never want to go to college. And if you luck up, you might go to maybe Cambridge. Don't worry about MIT or Harvard. No, you're never going to go there. Go ahead, Jim.
I want to bring up something, my little neighbor here. She lived across the street from me. We'll get back to Haverford again. We had a guy on our street, his name was George Sidney.
Yeah.
That was my idol. I wanted to run like him, play ball like him. I wanted to do all that. He was a competitive person. We would run all the time from pole to pole. I beat you, you beat me, pole to pole. He had an old big ugly rock. That was a shot put. I can throw that further than you can. You know, just everything he could think of that was competitive. George Sidnor, also at Haverford, I think it was 1954. He was a state champion, 100, 200, and the relay, 880 relay, won. 3 gold medals. He excelled in a lot of different races. Jumbo Elliott, that was the coach of Villanova University back in those days. He called Haverford High School inquiring about George for a scholarship. He was told he's not college material.
Yeah, exactly. That's what they said.
Jumbo Elliott, I watched it, I can see it in my mind right now because it came to George Sidnor's house. Knocked on the door. When he came out of that door, George Sidnor had a scholarship to Villanova. That's the name of that tree.
You forgot something. The only black detective on the Radnor Township.
Yeah.
On Radnor Township. And also a police officer.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
Not qualified. I'm just saying, all that and then not qualified.
And that's what he ended up
There
being
you go.
for years. Yep. Oh, we are somebody. I know that. Alfie,
Yes.
finish your story.
What?
You were talking about, you
So that
started.
was it.
No, I have a story,
Go ahead.
and the only reason why I'm bringing up my story is because,
Because he's your brother.
no, I love him dearly. Yes, he is my brother. But that Beechwood Brookline sign,
Oh, yeah.
okay, that is the P&W stop.
Right. I didn't
And,
steal it.
okay, I got you.
I didn't steal
But
that.
I wouldn't even be bringing this up if I didn't see that sign. Anyway, that is the station that I can walk down the hill to if I want to use the P&W.
Right.
That is my stop. That lets me off where I live. Okay, that's the first part of the story.
And this is
Okay.
old signage from the old color scheme they had.
Yes, that's
Us growing
exactly,
up, way
yeah,
back.
yeah,
I
from the
got this in
P&W.
a collectible antique place. I see that.
How did you get that?
You see, I've been a rail fan. most of
Get
my
what?
life. Rail fan, so I was just
Oh.
book y'all get.
Oh, okay,
You know.
all right, so I also
Some people say
went
I'm
to
on
Haverford
private.
School, lived in Havertown, and from the very day that I moved, that my family moved there in 1981, my son, who did not own a car at the time, would ride his bicycle wherever he wanted to go. And that would be to work at 6 a.m. in the morning from our house in Havertown to Haverford College. And he didn't say anything for the first couple of weeks. And that is that he was being stopped by the Haverford police every morning from our house to Haverford College. So it riled me, because I thought to myself, he's riding his bike to work, he's not bothering anybody. So I thought to myself, what can I do about this? I wrote a letter to the captain of the police at Haverford Township. I think his name was Hoover. And I told him in so many words, as nicely as I could, to leave my son alone, that my son is on his way to work using his bicycle, and do not stop him. And once I wrote that letter and hand-delivered it to the police station, made sure I have a copy, have it to this day. And shortly after that letter, it subsided a little. My son didn't have too much of a problem riding his bike back and forth to work. So that's my, oh, and that was 42 years ago. I'm still the only one on my street, and they know not to bother this colored, black, African American, whatever you want to call it. They know not to bother me, because I will tell them off in a minute. So that's my story. That's my story. I don't mess with them.
Can we go to Alice briefly and then to Dave?
Okay, Wayne, I lived in Wayne, I was raised in Wayne, Pennsylvania. Wayne is an interesting little community because all the black people live in pockets, and the majority of our community, which consisted of Henry Avenue, Mount Pleasant Avenue, and Upper Gulf. And most of the people in that neighborhood.
Excuse me, what about Highland Avenue? Highland Avenue.
She's talking about a different.
Wayne.
Yeah, but that's in Wayne.
Yeah, she
We
told me.
lived in a mile outside of Wayne.
Gotcha.
You know, matter of fact, in order for us to travel, we had to walk a mile to Wayne to catch public transportation.
I know what you're talking about. And I know what you're talking about.
Which was interesting because we had yellow cab, but no one could afford yellow cab. So there were people in our neighborhood. We had a person who would collect our junk, the birds, and they're still in business. We had farms. We basically were a real village. When we first got phones, the neighbors that didn't have phones, people would call us if we had a phone, and we would go outside, holler to the neighbor up the street, tell him, hey, you're wanted on the phone. But I think one of the experiences that was just really hard for me to understand, and thank God for God and my brother. We were a family of two, a boy and a girl. My neighbors, there were 12 kids. My mom worked for Wayne Jeweler, and my father wasn't around. So I stayed most of the time with my neighbors. There were 12 of them. They had a farm, we could, all kinds of fruit, things of that sort. But when all the kids would get together, we would go up to the playground, which just consisted of a field where we played baseball. But then we would walk down King of Prussia Road to a place called Martin's Dam.
Oh, yeah.
And we would stand outside and watch all of the other children swim in the pool or Martin's Dam. One day, someone from Martin's Dam came over and lined us all up. And what they did was they said, you can get in you can get in the creek, you can't get in the creek. You can get in the creek, you can't get in the creek. And what it was, the people who they invited were the white skinned people. And, you know, I'm excited. My brother said, you want to go on? I'm excited, you know. And then when he showed me, look who can go into the water and look who can't. And at that point is when I began to understand, well, like, we're all one community. But we are saying, I think the way we are now is a perfect example of the problems we're having with our young people. We have to start to stand up.
Go ahead, did you want? So you want to, go ahead.
Sure. Well, my experience with really basic racism was mostly, I was very fortunate to have some people in elementary school and into high school. There were some teachers that weren't so blatantly racist. Now, I remember my first grade teacher, Miss Weston. I love Miss Weston like a mother. And I was so determined I was going to stay with her another year. And I looked at it like this after I stayed in another year in first grade, and then something said, you have to go home. Miss Weston was almost my second mother. She wasn't prejudiced. That's the thing. See, I did have good experiences in lower school, and then in high school I had a very fine music teacher, Dr. Zerk. They were way ahead of the day. Now, I didn't have blatant racism until I started going into certain competitions. And I found out when I auditioned for Tri-County concerts, the idea of it is now the people that played it in the ensemble with me, they didn't criticize them. They sent me a letter telling me what I needed to do, and then I knew what was happening there. But I was as good as any of them, but that's the way it is. You know, I found racism more so outside of school. And of course, Dr. Zura, God rest his soul, was not that way. He encouraged me. He said, David, you should be always ready. And that stuck with me. So I know there are some good white folks.
Okay.
There's some good white folks too. You can find some of us are not that great, but Dr. Zura, I will say, if he's in heaven, he was a good man. I can say that now. Because he was and there were other teachers at Radnor, I think they were just as prejudiced as ever. They didn't show it, but they always had that attitude, like you can't do it. Probably they know what your potential is, right? They don't tap it. See, they do that to blind us from not getting to the ability to show what you can do. And I proved that at my own life, considering I had an algebra teacher. She didn't want me to learn algebra, and then at the time she was trying to teach me, she said, oh, I don't have time to help you. In other words, she should have said, you need a tutor. She didn't even do that. But see, since I'm older, I don't have any children. I said, first of all, if I had children today, I would be on them like white on black. Because they deny you the chance to learn it. If you're a person, oh, then they need tutors. Who said they all brilliant? You're finding that out now.
Right.
Do you remember when there was a pool at Haverford and we were not, I'm reminded.
It was called Brookline.
That's,
Brookline Pool, yeah.
What did they do with us when the white
Well, what
kids
they
went to
did-
the pool?
What they did was, at one point, the community center, which we used to call the reading,
Yeah,
African community.
they organized one day and they took us over there. We were allowed to go over there
okay.
on a certain day at a certain time.
Uh-huh.
But the pool was completely empty. Okay, so only we were allowed in the pool.
I got
And
you.
then when we left, I guess, I don't know if they emptied the pool. You know, but we were allowed to do that, one day a week.
Yeah.
And, but like I said, when we went, it would just be the group of black folks, or black kids at that time. And then we were allowed to go there in the Brookline pool.
I couldn't remember what happened. Okay, Miss Wright here reminded me about those days.
We have Severin and Bertha Jackman on racism. That's why.
I'll go first. Racism, coming up as a kid, I grew up in the 50s, wasn't an issue on our block. Our parents didn't discuss it. We were just, like I said, a homogeneous community. But we did hear certain epithets from our parents, like so-called woke statements, act your age, not your color, which meant that when you were out in public, you better don't go to stereotype. We knew about the stereotypes. As a kid, again, I didn't experience the racist thing until I got into junior high school. One of the most peculiar things, or before that even with teachers growing up, even in elementary school, I think one of the substitutes for the N-word was, I don't like your attitude. I don't know how many times I've heard that all through elementary school. And it pierced me every time I heard that, whether my attitude was foul or not, that's another thing, but just the way it was delivered, like they're calling you the N-word in a general sense. The other peculiar thing is when we got to junior high school, had a bus, and we were at least a mile and a half from the school, I think it was, or maybe further. We got a bus to go to school, but we had to walk home all year, the whole school year. All the way from Lower Montgomery Avenue, all the way back to our communities. And I just thought that was kind of strange. When I got to junior high school, being I was an artist, art-minded, I hated the art teacher. So I ended up compromising, and I joined choir for my experience being in school. And then after that, I went into service. That was my real culture shock. I won't go into that.
Okay, Bertha, and I have, I'm listening to all of this, and, talking to members, brothers and sisters, heard about, being called a nigger as a little kid. And my one brother, I asked him, I said, well, what did you do? He said, I just kept walking. He said, I didn't say anything, first, second, third grade. I just kept walking. You're talking about being in school and you're talking to the high school counselor. And I went through the same thing. I wanted to go to nursing school. Well, my sister wanted to go to college. Well, you're not, maybe you should just, be a secretary or go to vocational school. Thank God for Mom, because Mom's insistence was, no, you're going to stay on the academic track. Which would lead you into college. I just wanted to mention that. And just two other things. Great Valley High School, I just happened to be the president of the International Students Club. We had exchange students, and I was the president of the International Students Club. So, just like Suburban was just saying, my sister and I, we were talking, we were thinking, did our parents ever really talk to us about racism? And just like Suburban just said, well, it really wasn't discussed. So now I'm an adult. I'm working down in Washington, D.C. And I'm low level, into this particular nonprofit organization. And so one of my duties was to open the mail for our department. So now I'm seeing, like advertisements for study abroad, here, and exchange student over there, and it's coming to me. Well, when I was in high school, I'm the president of the International Club. Not one person said to me, how would you like to be an exchange student? And like I said, it wasn't until, you know, I'm an adult when all, you know, you start piecing things together. And that's when I thought, okay, they say knowledge is power. Knowledge is power.
Yes.
And you know, and I just tried to think, how was I affected by that? Well, I was affected by that by making sure that if there's an opportunity, say to some young person, say to my children, say to nieces and nephews, there's an opportunity, you take it, don't let anybody stop you. And if the opportunity is not there, you ask for it, or you make your own opportunity, that kind of thing. So I wanted to bring that up about way down in high school. The last piece I'm going to talk about as far as racism is about names and titles. My mom was a domestic, you know, like a lot of other people were. And, you know, where she would work at different families, different days of the week, that kind of thing. And I'm a little kid, one day, you know, she took us, you know, with her to work. And there was this one family, 2 boys, and I think they were either in like just seniors in high school or just starting UPenn or something like that. And they called my mother by her first name.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, little kid, well, wait a minute, wait. I didn't say anything to my mother because I was a shy little kid, didn't say anything. But I remember being angry about that. Wait a minute, how is it that you can call my mother by her first name and we have to call your mother Mrs.? And so that has stuck with me forever. To the point, one time I had one of my little nephews said, you know, well, you don't have to call you Aunt Bertha anymore because, you know, we're getting old. I said, no. No, I'm your aunt. I have a title. That's what you call me. You call a lady down the street Miss So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so. I said, no. I mean, I've had problems with that ever since then. But I just wanted to bring that up because, let me divert for a second. I have a habit of going on to YouTube and looking at the little shorts, you know, like 1, 2, 3 little minute things. And just recently, there's this piece that came up that said the 7 levels of racism. If anybody's interested in it, I can send it to you. And you saw it. Okay. All right. But anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there because it was very interesting with each level that the person was explaining. They started off with the Karens. And they were saying that the Karen is a person that just bothers you on a regular daily basis, you know, with their little complaints and kind of stuff. But it was fascinating to see how each level incorporates the level underneath it. And all of that is still happening today. Every level is still happening today. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But I said I was going to get back to the names. There's a case, the woman's name was Mary Hamilton. This was back in 1962, 63. She was a field worker for the organization that Martin Luther King was involved in. She was, and I just realized this, that she was part Italian and part
SCLC?
Yeah, yes. Southern Christian Union. So anyway, so this lady was quick to anger. She was very light-skinned, but she worked for the organization. And it was to the point, that Martin Luther King used to call her red because she was quick to anger and she didn't take any kind of mess. Well, anyway, so she was arrested. One of the many times she was arrested, she was in jail, and her case actually went all the way up to the National Supreme Court. And what it had to do with was about the name and the honorific of Miss. So, long story short, she's in court at a lower level, and, and she's sitting on the stand, and, the lawyers are, talking to her, and they kept calling her by her first name. And she said, I'm not answering any questions till you call me Miss Hamilton. Lawyer. Judge, can you make her, answer the question, so on and so forth? And so, anyway, she was being, what do you call it? Not hospital witness, contempt of court. So she's going back in jail. And she was also known by, by having, certain people coming to her cell, and if she didn't like what they said, she'd tell them to get out of her cell. But anyway, but the case went to the Supreme Court because she refused to answer any question if she was not addressed as Miss. Well, the Supreme Court agreed with her. And to this day, if you watch and listen, TV, movies, whatever, if you listen to, any kind of court scene, they address people as Mr.
Yes.
Or Miss.
Yes.
Or something like that. So I just wanted to bring that up as far as racism and why and how things are. So I'll leave on that.
Well, the only thing I have to say is, our Supreme Court right now, we don't know.
That's right.
Don't have a fair.
They in AWOL.
I want to add something that's kind of related to the whole subject of racism. I was watching Dr. George Floyd demonstrations a couple of years back. I was watching Morning Joe on MSNBC one morning, and it was they were talking about the incident where in Buffalo, a white senior citizen got knocked over by some indifferent cop. Everybody on the panel said what they had to say. Eugene Robinson's a black journalist in the Washington Post. He just looked up, and all he said was, white people, welcome to Black America.